All right, I don't want to wait too long, so I will go ahead and get started while everyone is still joining us, just with a few little housekeeping things. As you can see, just start off from the slide on here. My name is Brenna Spray. I'm the Outreach and Communications Officer with the Maryland Historical Trust. My contact details are right there. So if you have any questions following this, or have any questions during this and you want to send me an email, feel free to do that. I should be able to get back to you pretty quickly, or forward your question on to one of the staff members. You are also welcome to email them directly. But if you're not quite sure who needs to answer your question, I am usually a good person to start with. You will also see that we are recording this presentation. If you registered for the event, which many of you should have, unless you got forwarded the link from someone else, I will be sending the recording to you as soon as it's processed and downloaded and up on our YouTube page. So you won't have to search around for that. We will be sending it to you directly. And you will also notice that you don't have access to turn on your camera or be able to turn on your microphone. This is a new feature with Google Meet that we're trying out, because we did have over 200 people registered for this event. And we weren't quite sure how many people were going to show up. So we wanted to be able to manage the questions that people might have and things like that. So you will see, if you're on your computer, you'll see in the bottom right of your screen a button that has 9 little dots. This is called Meeting Tools. You're going to click that, and in that, where it pops up, you will see something that says Q&A. If you're on your phone, it's going to be 3 little dots in the bottom middle of your screen, and it'll be the same thing. You click that, and something that says Q&A will pop up. This is where you're going to pop any questions that you have during the presentation, and then we will get all of those questions together at the end and answer them then. If you do have any issues with finding that at any point, you are able to raise your hand, and we can figure it out from there. But hopefully everyone's able to do that. And if it's a question very specific to your property, that's something that is better addressed directly with one of the staff members. So feel free to email them, as I said. I will do really quick introductions of everyone so that then they can just jump straight into their presentations. So today we're going to hear from Stacy Montgomery, who's MHT's Capital Programs Administrator, Carrie Jones, who's one of MHT's Tax Credit Preservation Officers, and Andrew Aliferis. I'm sorry, I should have double checked how to pronounce that with you, Andrew. He's the Assistant Director of Special Loans and the Maryland Housing Rehabilitation Program in the Housing and Building Energy Programs at the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. And during our Q&A session, Melissa Archer, who is a preservation officer at DHCD, will be our moderator. So that's everyone that you're going to see today. And with those very, very quick introductions, I will turn things over to Stacy.
Thank you, Anna. So hi, I'm Stacy Montgomery. I'm the Capital Programs Administrator at Maryland Historical Trust. And today I'm going to briefly share some information on MHT's capital programs that support brick and mortar projects. So if we can go to the next slide. Okay, great. MHT has 3 capital programs: the Historic Preservation Capital Grant, the African American Heritage Preservation Program, and location, public impact, and education. The capital grant generally attracts the most homeowners, so I'm going to give a brief overview of all of them, but we'll generally focus on the program. Next slide, please. So the Preservation Capital Grant Program promotes the acquisition, restoration, and rehabilitation of historic properties in Maryland. Eligible properties are limited to those that are listed on or determined eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, either individually or as a contributing structure within a historic district. The program's annual allocation was just increased to $1 million to fund projects across the state. The maximum individual award is capped at $100,000. All projects that are awarded capital grant funding through this program are required to convey a preservation easement to the Maryland Historical Trust before any funds can be dispersed. These are term easements years based on the total award. All awardees, except for nonprofit organizations, are also required to provide a dollar-for-dollar cash or income requirement would apply to homeowners. This program is highly competitive. In the last round, we received over 40 eligible applications and made just 9 awards. Next slide, please. So the next program is the African American Heritage Preservation Program grant, which is a program that's jointly administered with the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture and the Maryland Historical Trust. The annual allocation for this program is $5 million, and applicants can request up to $250,000 each year. The awardees of this program are chosen by the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture based
Hey, Stacy.
on the merits of their application.
Hey, Stacy, sorry to interrupt you. I thought it was just me, but a few people have messaged. Your audio is cutting in and out. Is there, I don't know if there's anything we can do about that, but I just wanted to maybe see if there was here, because your video is already off, but I just wanted to give you a heads up.
Okay, is it better?
Maybe keep going. Worst case, everyone, with Stacy's audio, all of the information is on the slides that she is saying at the moment. So if you have any specific questions, we can always share the slides out. And Stacy, maybe if you talk a tiny bit slower, I know we don't have a ton of time today, maybe that might help a little bit.
Okay, can you hear me now? Sorry about that.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Sorry. So I'm going to start through the African American Heritage Preservation Program, if that's okay. So it's an annual allocation of $5 million, and applicants can request up to $250,000 each year. The awardees of this grant are chosen by the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture based on the merits of their application. The grant funds capital improvements to sites that are important to African American history and culture in Maryland, but the sites do not need to have a historic designation or even be historic to be eligible for funding. MHT may take an easement on properties that are eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. There's no match requirement for this program, but it is, like the other one, highly competitive with awards given to a variety of public institutions, local governments, and nonprofits statewide. Next slide, please. So the Maryland Historical Trust Capital Loan Program was established by the General Assembly in 1973 to encourage the preservation of historic properties statewide. For homeowners, the loan can fund acquisition, refinancing, or rehabilitation. But to be eligible for the loan program, homeowners must demonstrate that they are unable to obtain private financing for their project. The conveyance of an easement to the MHT is also required before the loan can be dispersed. Loans have a 20-year term with a fixed annual interest rate set upon the most recently sold state general obligation bonds. Interested applicants are encouraged to reach out to MHT staff in advance of submitting an application for the loan program, and generally, given the level of funding, one loan is made each year. Next slide, please. So here you can see a table of different types of work for the different programs that are considered eligible capital funding. It's not really easy to see on this slide, but for the Historic Preservation Capital Grant, that is limited to acquisition and rehabilitation and restoration. For the African American Heritage Preservation Program, it's acquisition, rehabilitation, and restoration, pre-development, which is like plans and archaeology, and acquisition and new construction. And then for the loan program, acquisition, rehabilitation, restoration, and refinancing are all eligible activities for homeowners. So next slide, please. Okay, so what are some of the fundamentals you should know about these programs? With a limited yearly allocation and a lot of interested applicants, these programs are highly competitive. Before applying for one of the programs, homeowners should consider the following. First, applications are scored by a review panel based on a rubric that favors the protection of a historic site and the broader public impact of the project. Therefore, all projects should have a strong public engagement component to be competitive. While eligible, private residential properties are generally not competitive for the capital programs unless they are of exceptional historic significance or have a substantial public benefit like established public programming. For all capital programs, the work has to meet the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation to be eligible, which means that grant-funded projects must protect and retain historic features to retain the property's historic character. Work that is already underway or hasn't been procured following our competitive bidding process is not eligible. Next slide, please. As I've already discussed, the capital programs are highly competitive. Grant awardees are selected based on how well their project meets the program's scoring criteria. The scoring criteria places the greatest emphasis on the significance of the site, the urgency and the need for the project, and the benefit of the project beyond the individual property owner. So the panel for each application program will also consider how the scope of work will help protect the property. For example, the acquisition of the Catoctin Furnace African American Cemetery featured here ensured that the cemetery would be protected from further loss and allowed for the expansion of an interpretive trail. Applications for properties that educate the public, like a museum or historic site, or that provide an important community amenity like a park or fraternal hall, are examples of sites that score well under the selection criteria. The ability for a grant application to demonstrate the broader impact of the project on the community, the town, city, or even the state will help a project score well and hopefully be awarded a grant. Next slide, please. So the capital grants and loans are awarded once annually, and each program has its own cycle, which you can see on the screen. We usually host workshops ahead of opening the actual application. And so if you're interested in any of those, please keep an eye on MHT's website for the official dates for the next round. Next slide, please. So in closing, MHT's capital grant programs are often of interest to homeowners, but the competitive scoring process really favors public sites where the capital project will benefit more than an individual owner. If you want more information on any of these programs, you certainly can visit the MHT website, and my contact information is also on the slide here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carrie Jones, and I'm one of the tax credit specialists working at MHT. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk about the homeowners tax credit today, as it is the primary program that MHT has to support homeowners in maintaining and restoring their historic houses. The tax credit is equal to 20% of the qualified rehabilitation expenses for a project. It is applied to your state of Maryland income taxes for the tax year that the project is complete. The credit is not a grant, such as the ones that Stacy just described, that you draw against, and it is not a reduction in your local property taxes. As I mentioned, it is equal to 20% of the qualified rehabilitation expenses. For example, if you have $50,000 in expenses, you will receive a $10,000 credit towards your state of Maryland income taxes. Next slide, please. Here is some basic information about the tax credit. I will go into details about each of these throughout the presentation. The credit is available to homeowners of single-family residences and some multifamily residences. It is worth up to $50,000 in total credits, though you must have at least $5,000 in eligible expenses. Work has to be completed in a continuous 24-month time period of your choosing, and unlike other programs, there are no application deadlines. Instead, applications are accepted all year long. The credit can also be combined with local or federal tax incentives, though these are different programs with different requirements. Next slide, please. There are a few different ways a property can qualify for the program. In order to be eligible for the program, the property has to have one of these designations: individual listed in the National Register or individual local listing, a contributing property within a National Register historic district or a locally listed historic district, properties that are pending these designations, properties within a certified heritage area with documentation from the Maryland Heritage Authority justifying the eligibility, and properties that are in the Department of Natural Resources curatorship program. If you have questions about if your house is eligible, you can check Medusa, MHT's website, or contact tax credit staff. Next slide, please. The application process is a three-step process. The Part 1 and Part 2 applications can be submitted at the same time and require a complete set of current photographs. The Part 1 application establishes eligibility for the tax credit program, and the Part 2 application confirms that all proposed work meets the program requirements. Once MHT approves the Part 2 application, work can begin. If work is started prior to approval, it is not eligible for the credit and may jeopardize the property owner's ability to utilize the tax credit program or claim the credit. As such, we recommend that you submit these applications as soon as you can. Once the application is complete or 24 months have passed since the project started, the Part 3 application form, invoices, and proofs of payments, and another current set of photographs is submitted to MHT. Next slide, please. The application materials can be submitted electronically, and as mentioned, the Part 1 and Part 2 must be approved prior to starting any work. The application materials are reviewed by tax credit staff, such as myself, and approved by the director or deputy director. Often, MHT approves the homeowner applications with conditions, such as a request for detailed product specifications or with guidance on how work items should be performed. Next slide, please. Typically, it'll take 45 days from when a complete application is received to review the application and for the director or deputy director to approve it. Remember that you can submit the Part 1 and Part 2 at the same time, so typically it'll be 45 days for MHT to review both. As mentioned, once the Part 2 is approved, then work can begin. MHT accepts homeowner applications throughout the year. There is no limit to the number of homeowner applications or dollar amounts as there are with other programs. If you have an emergency, such as seen in this photograph with the tree falling on your roof, please contact MHT's tax credit staff as soon as possible to determine if the work is eligible and to receive an approval. An application is still required for an emergency, and staff can provide guidance on how to apply quickly. Next slide, please. When MHT reviews the Part 2 application, we consider if all of the proposed work items meet the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. As Stacy mentioned, these are 10 standards which prioritize the retention and repair of historic features, such as windows, and materials such as slate roofs. While additions and alterations are allowed, they must maintain the historic character of the building. For additional information about the standards, there is a lot of guidance available on the National Park Service Technical Preservation Services website, and MHT tax credit staff is also happy to review proposed work items and provide guidance on how to meet the standards. Next slide, please. As the tax credit is an incentive to maintain a historic building or return it to a state of utility, allowable expenses can be used for exterior repairs, including roofs, siding and masonry, foundation and structural repairs, and window repairs. It can also be used for interior finishes, such as plaster walls and wood floor refinishing. In addition, historic outbuildings and garages are also eligible for the program. If you need architectural and engineering services, such as structural reports, you can also use those. You can also apply those for the tax credit. Next slide, please. Just as there are eligible expenses, there are also ineligible expenses. These include work outside of the building, such as landscaping and driveways, as well as new construction and remodeling. Interior decor, such as curtains, blinds, and rugs, are also not eligible expenses. Next slide, please. There are also items that MHT considers to not be in keeping with the Secretary of the Interior standards, and as such are not allowed. This includes removal of or changing major character-defining features, such as interior walls and ceilings, to create an open concept plan. Replacing historic finishes, such as wood floors, with modern vinyl flooring, and adding historic features that did not previously exist, such as a reclaimed mantelpiece. Next slide, please. Now that I have covered some of the program basics, I would like to discuss the project lifecycle and receiving the credit. If, for an example, an application is submitted and approved in January of 2026, and the project is completed in December of 2027, the homeowner will submit the Part 3 application form with all of the proof of purchases, invoices, and another set of current photographs to MHT. Once the Part 3 application is approved, the approval is attached to the State of Maryland income taxes for 2027 because that's the year that the project is completed. The Part 3 application does not have to be submitted in December. However, it should be submitted when the work is complete or 24 months have passed since the project started. Once the Part 3 application is approved, this ends MHT's involvement in the process. Next slide, please. Since this is an income tax credit, the credit is processed by the Comptroller's Office when the homeowner's state income taxes are approved for the year the project is complete. If the project is complete in 2026, the credit is received in early 2027 when the 2026 income taxes are processed by the Comptroller's Office. The credit is received in the form of a refund and is fully refundable. This means if a property owner has $100,000 in qualified expenses, they will receive a $20,000 tax credit. If they owe taxes, for example, $5,000, they will be refunded the difference, $15,000, as a one-time tax refund. If the property owner does not owe any taxes, they will receive the full $20,000 credit amount. Again, this credit is processed as a refund from the Comptroller's Office, not MHT. Next slide, please. To recap a few key takeaways, the Part 1 and Part 2 application can be submitted together and will be reviewed by MHT concurrently. The Part 3 application is submitted when all of the work is complete. All work items, regardless if they are eligible for the credit or not, must be described on the Part 2 application and reviewed and approved by MHT prior to starting work. And the work items must all be in keeping with the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. Finally, MHT encourages you to consult our online resources and tax credit staff with any questions. Next slide, please. You can find these resources and staff contacts on our website. Information available on our website includes the application forms and instructions, an FAQ document, and information on submitting an electronic application, as well as links to some of the information I mentioned from the National Park Service. Next slide, please. Here's my contact information and our general inquiry email address. Please reach out to us with any questions. Thank you.
Hi, this is Andrew. I'm the Assistant Director of Special Loans. Our program's been around since 1973, and we provide loans and grants to allow aging in place and also to perform critical health and safety repairs on homeowners' houses. Next slide, please. So the Special Loans Program, it encompasses 12 sub-programs. We get a funding of $8.4 million a year. Grants are available to people who are 50% of area median income or less. Typically, anything that ends up being a loan, from what I've seen and signed and authorized, is usually 0% interest with a 20-year term with no payments due. We base the loan or the grant amounts on the price of the repairs, which people find contractors, identify what needs to be repaired, and then sends it in to us for the underwriters and our technical reviewers to review. Our cap on funding is a $5,000 minimum with a $50,000 maximum. And we also look at the equity of a house, since if it's a loan, it uses the house as equity. So we're able to go up to 110% of equity. Next slide. So this slide here just talks about how we get our money. Next slide. So this is the sub-programs here, and each of the following slides will I'll give a little bit of detail on how that program works. Next slide. So the Maryland Housing Rehabilitation Program, or MERP as people call it, is the main one of these 12 loans. This is what I was talking about, that we do critical health and safety repairs. Critical health and safety repairs are things, if you're in the energy world, you might consider them as like barriers to weatherization. That would be like roofs that are letting water in. Perhaps there's missing siding on the outside of the house. Perhaps the chimney is about to collapse. Maybe the ceramic flue is falling apart and needs to be replaced. We do heating equipment. We do water heaters. Anything that would make your house either unsafe or unlivable. Next slide, please. So this is a list of the kind of things we do. You can see that if you had pest control problems, we do that. We do fall-in injury prevention, such as the walkways that would be your main entrance into the house. If that sidewalk is falling apart, we can fix that. We will replace windows under certain criteria. If it's like a security issue where somebody can enter your house without your permission, if water is coming in there and causing damage. We'll also do radon mitigation. And as I mentioned, in these older houses that we're talking about in the Maryland Historic Trust, you're very likely to have things like vermiculite or asbestos. Those are things that we would be able to address. Also gas leaks. Any house that has gas pipes in it, 90% of them typically have some form of gas leak. So that's something important to be aware of. And we also do mold remediation. Next slide. All right, the indoor plumbing program does a little bit more than what it says, because it seems like indoor, that would only be limited to indoor, but in reality, we also do septic systems. Modern construction requires sprinkler systems and new construction, so we do that. We cover the cost of percolation costs. We'll do any kind of plumbing repair inside the house. I had mentioned water heaters. We'll do that. And so that's what that program funds. And we also dig wells with that program. Next slide. The Special Targeted Applicant Rehabilitation Program is a STAR program that's funded to us through HUD. Their cap on the funding is 125% of the equity of the house. This is the only program that we have that can tear a house down to the foundation and build it from scratch. Now that is not something you necessarily would want to do with a historic structure, but this house is also a way of addressing health and safety issues, but using federal money. Next slide. So the Accessible Homes for Seniors program is the one that I was talking about aging in place. So this one, we can do ADA bathrooms, we can do kitchen and bathroom modification, we can build ramps, we can put chair lifts. the whole goal of this program is to allow the occupant to be able to age in place in their home. Next slide. The Homeowners Assistance Fund is a program that we ran from 22 to 23. Currently it's on hold, but there is a possibility that we might be getting some extra money to do about 200 additional applications. This was a grant program, so we were able to give up to $15,000 of money, which didn't have to get paid back since it was a grant, to address health and safety issues. Next slide. Lead hazard reduction program. Now this is a very good tie-in with historic structures because there's a good chance, because they're older than 1978, that there's going to be lead in a lot of the materials that were used. People tend to think in terms of paint, but lead is also in varnishes and other kind of finishes as well. So this program will fund the identification and remediation of lead. Next slide. Homeownership Works is a pilot that we had in Baltimore City, this one, and also Cambridge. This one might extend to other areas. I think that they are looking to extend it, but this one, we would work on the local people. Rebuild Metro would work on the facade, and we would work on the interior, and we were restoring historic brownstones in Baltimore City. Next. Ground rent redemption program. This is very specific to Baltimore City. Ground rents are fees that apply to the ground that a house is built on, and they go all the way back to the late 19th century, like 1880. And in 1990, they passed a law that allowed people to pay off their ground rent, and this is a loan program that gives them the money to pay off the ground rent. That way they actually like own the ground and they're not renting it anymore. Next slide. The group home program, this one is on hold, but we would typically receive a little over $1 million to fund group homes, where transient individuals who might have some form of addiction would find a place to live as they are getting therapy to get off of their addiction. Next slide. Healthy Homes for Healthy Kids. This is a partnership with Medicaid and CHIP. This is if a child has a very high level of lead in their blood, that any structure, that any home that they spend a lot of time in, this doesn't have to be their own home, could be like a grandparent's home, would qualify for lead remediation. Next slide. Independent living credit. This is where a homeowner can do accessibility features on their house, and then for the next tax year, they would ask for this tax credit. And so typically we're doing 100,000, and that is divided up by however many applicants there are who apply for that tax credit, with a cap of 5,000. Next slide. Disaster relief housing program. This is only called up when there's a disaster. Hurricane Ida was the last one, but in May of this year, Governor Westmore declared an emergency due to the flooding in Western Maryland. And there is discussions that we're going to be using funds to help, I think, about 200 homeowners who had damage from the floods in Cumberland, Maryland, and I think a little bit beyond that in Allegheny County. Next slide. And then the rest of this is information on how to apply for the program. And then also there's a reference at the very end of this. So I think everyone is going to get a copy of this. So this will give you the answers that you need in order to be able to apply for our program. So definitely, we have a lot of assistance available to people to help them address the issues that might be on their house. And one of the notes that I made for myself is a lot of these historic houses have things like knob and tube. I saw a question come in about energy efficiency. You can't put insulation in an attic or a wall if you've got knob and tube. So that's one of the things that my program is also able to help with, which might help someone with a historic structure be able to make that house a little bit more energy efficient. So I appreciate your time.
Okay, so I think at this point, I am going to turn it over to Melissa Archer, who is going to work through the questions that we've already received. While she's doing that, if anybody thinks of any questions, please feel free to pop them into that Q&A section. Again, if you're online, it's those 9 little dots in the bottom right corner where you'll find the Q&A button. And if you're on your phone, there's 3 dots in the bottom middle of your screen. So please feel free. You can still add questions, even though we've started going through the ones we've already received. So Melissa, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Brenna. During the presentations, we did get a few questions that came in, so I'm going to go through them from oldest to newest. The first question came from Lisa. She was just curious how many people were in the meeting. And so I'm happy to report that it's fluctuated from right now 39, but we had up to 46 viewers in the meeting at some point. So pretty good turnout. And then Lisa also asked for examples of these African American history grants. And so Brenna posted, I hope you can all see it, a link to the most recent governor's announcement of the fiscal year 25 awards that were announced in January. So that gives you a sense of those kind of projects that are funded through that program. Drew Schmidt-Perkins. Hi, Drew. I used to be an intern with you back in the day. But anyway, a question from Drew is, in her neighborhood, it's a common problem that replacing historic slate roofs is very expensive, also cedar shakes, and that a 20% tax credit is helpful, but it's not enough to incentivize people to do historically appropriate repairs, and that it ends up degrading the historic integrity because they go for cheaper alternative materials like vinyl siding and asphalt. So this is a great question. I think it's something that we see frequently, and I think that this would probably be something maybe Carrie or Stacy could weigh in, or I have my own theories on this, but and Drew, can we make it so that Drew can speak up and verbalize her question?
Yeah, give me 1 second here. Drew, you should be getting a notification of some kind. And you might have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Hi, Melissa. So yeah, I mean, I work very hard in our neighborhood with folks. A lot of the houses here are from 1920s, a little bit before, a little bit after, and people want to replace the shakes, the cedar shakes, or the few slate roofs, and you just can't do it, right? I mean, when we had to replace the slate roof, my beloved slate roof of my home, I had to choose between sending my 3rd child to college or replacing the slate roof. Pretty easy decision in the end, but it damn near killed me. The 20% wasn't enough. 20% is not enough to have somebody be able to afford what's outrageously expensive now, the cedar shakes. So, you know, is there a way that we can get heads together and figure out a different sort of funding model for these? whether it's a grant program or because these are the real significant. This is the exterior of the building. And, you know, it just kills me to see person after person who really wants to do the right thing be forced to do something that they don't want to do, like we had to do on our beloved home. We did the best job we could, but it still makes me wince that we had to make that decision. So we got hit with this personally. We actually lost our whole historic tax credit for that round because we had to do this. So none of the other historic work we did got funded, which we were like, okay, those are the rules. But I'm really interested in finding a solution to this because this is the exterior of these beautiful homes. We do want to figure out a way that we can keep them. So I rant, but thank you for the opportunity.
I could just say, Drew, that special loans doesn't have a restriction on what type of roofing would be put in place. If we're talking about a roof on a historic structure that has a cedar roof and there was leakage coming into the house, we would not deny repairing a cedar roof to restore it to its original condition.
But that has income limits, right? So that's
yeah, it does. It's 80%.
Yeah.
80% is our cap. So anybody who's making more than 80% of area median income would not qualify for our program.
Right. So that's the conundrum here. People who are looking to do these kind of repairs often, you know, don't meet that. But it's a great thing for me to keep in mind when I'm helping our neighborhood think through this.
Mm-hmm.
And related, Andrew, are you able to explain more about that area median income and where folks can find out what that AMI is for their particular neighborhood?
Yeah, in my presentation, there are links to our site. And that would be there. There's in the application itself or the frequently asked questions, I have a list of the area median income for each of the areas based on family size. So, and as I had mentioned in my presentation, where there's another question, somebody said, can you make it clear what's grants and what is loans? All of these programs are grants or loans with the exception of the HAF program, which was only grants. But you have to be below 50% of area median income to qualify for a grant. But as I also mentioned, as I'm constantly approving applications, the only terms I'm seeing for people with loans is 0% interest with a 20-year term and no payments due. So it's the purpose of our program is to provide loans and grants to make critical repairs to people who would probably not qualify to get any kind of loan from a bank. So we're there to make sure that people have the ability to remain in their homes.
And I would say that, you know, look into those AMI cutoffs because it's higher than you might think. I was always surprised to see that my own family qualifies for a lot of these assistance programs.
That's a fact. I was talking to a woman today and she lives alone in Baltimore City and she makes $36,000 a year. And when I told her that the cap is 54, obviously she's below that cap. Actually, the cap, the 54 or whatever that I quoted for her that's the 50% of area because she was interested in getting a grant. So like you say, people should make themselves aware of the area median income. They might be surprised, especially if they're in a suburb that's close to Washington, D.C. The incomes on that in those suburbs are much higher than you might imagine.
All right, and going back to the pending questions, let's see. We answered Drew. I'm going to skip Brenna's questions real quick to make sure we get to new ones that came in. This is a question for tax credits. If a project is completed in 2027, can a new project be applied for right away? Would you just submit a new part 2?
Yes, so there is no limit on the amount of times you can apply for the program. So if you finished a project, let's say 2026, you can apply again as soon as you complete the first project.
And a question for Andrew. Could you explain a little bit more about the grants versus loans? I think you touched on it just a second ago. It's based on underwriting.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. It's based on underwriting. So the income is a role in that, but also equity in the home is a role in that. And also like how much money you have saved in the bank account is based on, that's criteria as well. So I tell people, I can't tell you if you're going to have a grant or a loan. It has to go through an underwriting process. The underwriting process for a complete file is usually, it can be done within a week. I always give the underwriters a couple of weeks to be able to, if there's any kind of problems with the deed or anything like that, to work through that. But it's all based on underwriting. So nobody could tell you from the very beginning, unless you're under 50% of area median, whether or not it's going to be a grant or a loan. But even with that, as they say, it's called grant eligible, not grant guaranteed. So I encourage anybody who feels that they could use the assistance to apply. That doesn't cost you anything. And then let the underwriter determine what the best terms is. And they do try to leverage the programs, the multiple programs, to make this as affordable to people as possible.
Great, thank you. All right, we have a question about National Register listing and if there are resources to assist homeowners. And I think something that is important that didn't get touched on in the presentation is that properties can either individually be listed in the National Register, but most of the projects that come through these programs, other than the capital grant, you're probably looking at individual nominations. But for historic tax credits, the majority are properties that contribute to a historic district, so where the whole neighborhood is designated. And so those designations, they could happen in different ways. And so is Stacy or Carrie, do either of you want to take this one on and talk about the listing process?
So I can talk about for the grant program, and I'll let Carrie touch on the tax credit program. So an important thing for all the so for just the capital grant and capital loan program is that you actually don't have to be listed on the National Register of Historic Places. You have to be listed or determined eligible, and someone on the MHT staff makes that determination. So we recommend if you do consider applying that you reach out to us far in advance, so we can get that determination made for you. And so we'll look at things like, are you located in an existing historic district, whether it's a local district or National Register district. But if you all already are listed, we would make that, if you already have an existing individual listing, that's super helpful, but it's absolutely not required. It's just you need to be determined eligible. So if you own a historic building, we'll work with our National Register specialist to do that. You don't have to be individually listed for the national or eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. Like Melissa said, you can be a contributing building in a historic district. Most of the National Register nominations have that list of contributing buildings. Newer ones do in the nomination, which is available through that Medusa tool. But if there's any question, we work with that specialist here on staff. So if you're considering grants and loans, you would reach out to me well in advance of applying, just so we can make that determination for you, because it does take a little time to turn it around. And I'll let Carrie talk to tax credits.
Okay, go ahead. Yep, Carrie.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same for tax credits. You don't have to be individually listed. You can be listed as part of a contributing resource to a district, and that is the majority of the homeowners are considered contributing buildings instead of being individually listed. We also, most localities, we also consider local listing. So you might not be listed on the state and national register, but if you're locally listed in Baltimore City, for example, some parts of Montgomery County as well, even though you might not be on the national register, you can still be eligible for the program. There's a few other eligibility requirements that I listed out, DNR's curatorship program, but most people, as Melissa said, are listed as part of a historic district. If you're not part of a historic district and you want to pursue individual listing, then you can work with our staff. You don't have to be listed in order to apply, just have some determination of eligibility, which is that Part 1 application I mentioned earlier. You just need to be listed by the time you're finished with the program. And that expenses related to listing can be subsidized by the tax credit program. So happy to answer more questions about that and put people in touch with our National Register group.
Thanks. Okay, a question from Catalina about site visits and if there are folks from any of these offices that are willing to come out to a property to discuss their projects. I'll start with Andrew. Does DHCD have staff that can make visits?
Yeah, because we depend on bids for the repairs to be given to us. I do have field staff that are able to go out and clarify, but it doesn't start with us. It starts with a bid. And then if the pictures that are provided don't tell the story, my inspectors are able to go out and look at things, and all three of my inspectors do make recommendations. And I always encourage people to address all the health and safety issues that they're wanting to address. That way they only have to apply to the program once. So, but my field inspectors are able to give some feedback, and if they visit the site to maybe call out some things that maybe a person didn't think about.
And Carrie, what about the tax credit program?
We do have some staff available to make site visits. It's certainly not a requirement. People often ask me if we need to come out and inspect the work that's been done. However, most of the communication we have and understanding of both the work before the project's approved and the work when it's complete is done through those photographs that I mentioned. We are always happy to schedule video calls with folks and phone calls if that would also be helpful.
Thank you. And a question from Scott. I think this was answered earlier about the AMI and where you can find the reference to that. And yes, this presentation and discussion is being recorded and will be shared following the conclusion. Another question from Lisa. Oh, Carrie, could you explain a little bit more about the photographs that are required for the Part 2 homeowners tax credit program? And I think this is a great question. It's something that comes up all the time where folks, have a misunderstanding that they only have to submit photos of the exterior of their house, that the interior doesn't need to be reviewed, or they only need to send photos of, the area where they're proposing work done. So if you could talk about that, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. With both the Part 1 and 2 applications and the Part 3 applications, a complete set of interior and exterior photographs are required. So typically with the Part 1 and Part 2, the photographs will be all sides of the exterior, all spaces on the interior, including secondary spaces, and then also additional detailed photographs of where the work is proposed. For example, if window repairs are proposed, detailed photographs of the windows. When it comes to the Part 3, it's essentially the same set of photographs showing where the work was performed, and also important to us where the work wasn't performed. As part of our statute, we do have to verify that no work was performed without approval from MHT. And as mentioned, the photographs are the primary way of doing that.
Yeah, so another way of saying that homeowners can't cherry pick what they want to claim the credit for. MHT looks at everything that's being done to the house, whether or not you intend to get a credit for it or not. So you have to be aware of that, because you can get disqualified if you do any work that is not approved.
That's correct. I often say this isn't a buffet where you get to pick and choose what you want, but instead an all or nothing type of credit.
Yes. Okay, another question. This one's interesting. a historic boarding school that has housing on site, and they're wanting to know if, I'm assuming these are leased houses, if they could be eligible for any of these assistance programs. I'll start with Andrew. I think your slide specified that it has to be a fee simple deed ownership. Is that correct?
We only do homeowners, single family, so up to 4 units, but it's owned by the owner, so we wouldn't do rental properties.
And Stacy, your program mentioned some kind of leasehold term.
So for the capital grant programs, potentially, this is a public site, or if there's a larger public benefit because this is housing teachers, schools are certainly eligible. You might be able to demonstrate that. For the loan program, again, public sites are more eligible, so you may be eligible for that as well. But we'd want to understand a little bit more about the ownership structure of that. But there's no type of organization that isn't eligible. There's just because it's competitive, because there's that public benefit piece. And then you may also want to consider for the capital grant and the capital loan, the MHT is going to take an easement on the property. And if you're not an established 501c3, then you're also going to have to provide a 1-for-1 match. Those are just important considerations for the school to think about in their application. And then what type of work are you doing? Is it something that's competitive? And then can you demonstrate how that's going to provide this broader public benefit beyond the individual that lives in the house, right? How does that benefit the school overall? Or is there an important story that's being told here? Is there something that relates to, even like the African American Heritage Preservation Program, is there a connection to African American history and culture? Or is there something significant beyond just, I want to put a roof on this house? So that's for the capital programs. You have to think about that broader impact piece too.
Yeah, and as for the tax credits, I know we were going to try to avoid really case specific questions, and so you can always follow up with Carrie, but I think this gets really complicated for tax credits because it could end up being considered a commercial application. So that's something I would encourage you to follow up with Carrie about if you're interested in tax credits.
Yep, I was just going to say quickly, Melissa, that similar to some of the DHCD programs, you do have to be for the homeowner tax credit, you do have to be the fee simple owner. However, as mentioned, we do have tax credit programs also for income producing properties, and I would be happy to take that question via email or a phone call.
Great, and yes, Lisa, a general kind of overview photos for the property and then detail shots for where specific work is being done. So we are right on time. I do want to put a plug out. I did not do a presentation for I work for the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development, but we partner with local governments and nonprofit organizations and provide capital funding that is often subawarded to individuals. And so questions about, roof replacements, there are particular programs we fund. Like, for instance, there's a roof replacement program in Cumberland that is funded through DHCD, where income eligible applicants, senior citizens can apply to have their historic roofs replaced. And it's administered by the city of Cumberland in coordination with my agency. We have programs like that all across the state. They often have very specific priorities, a roof, energy efficiency, upgrades, facade improvement, like that. And so a lot of times when programs are not a good fit for Stacy's, she will send that applicant to me, and then I help assess if it's something that one of our partners can help with, or if it's best suited for Andrew's program. So we all talk to each other and know each other, and we try to help people out and get them to the right place. So with that, now, thank you so much for joining. Brenna, did you have anything else you wanted to say before we conclude?
Nope. Just that I will send out the slides and the recording once everything is compiled. So probably in the next day or two. So be looking out for that. But you will be able to find the recording on our YouTube channel, since that's where I'll be linking from.